Fatutu is really good and does a lot as a healer. I mean, don't just take my words for it. Let's see what Shamane has to say.
이게 그 상태다. 체력 4700, 방어력 329, 마저 201인 챔피언이 저지불가, 실드, 벽 넘기는 거 있고요. 에어본 있고, 심지어 쿨타임은 1초밖에 안 되고, 마나는 15 들고, W는 심지어 변신하면 쿨 초기화에다가 패시브는 고정 피해가 들어가며, 그 다음에 방마저로 올리면 올릴수록 스킬 가속이 생기고, Q에 스킬 가속이 생기고, 스킬 속도가 빨라지고, 그 다음에 공격력 개수가 있어가지고, W가
Okay, thank you very much Shamane for the heartfelt speech. And now, let's get started. Fatutu isn't just strong, she basically does everything, and she's one of the most overloaded healer in the game right now. She keeps your team alive with massive healing, shrug off debuff with constant purifies, boosting damage for follow-up comps, and even brings serious firepower of her own. To really get how Fatutu works, we need to start with her core mechanic, Spirit Shells. Instead of the typical buff or debuffs, they act a lot more like a separate item she carries around and stick onto enemies. There can only be 12 shells on the field at a time, and most of her kit revolves around sticking them onto enemies and then pulling them back. When a follow-up attack hits an enemy with shells, it gains up to 60% damage bonus and crit damage bonus based on the number of stacks. That alone would be strong, but Fatutu doesn't stop there. Each time she applies shell, there is a 20% chance she guarantees a free Moxie. And this happens enough to get her ultimate back every 2 to 3 turns, even when you're only giving her 1 action per turn. Then, when shell are retrieved, she heals the entire team based on her attack. If you manage to pull back all 12 at once, it's easily the strongest team-wide heal in the game. And finally, for every 7 times the shell are triggered, whether from applying or retrieving, Fatutu automatically follow up with her skill 1 on the enemy holding the most stacks. So how do you actually stick shells onto enemies? Well, there are a couple of ways. Her skill 1 applies 3 shells to a single enemy, and her ultimate take it a little bit further, dumping all the shells she currently has onto the target and marks them with a beacon. This beacon causes shells to automatically reapply every time they are retrieved, so the shells cannot decrease on that target while the beacon is on them. Do keep in mind that the beacon is a negative status instead of special, so this can actually be removed or stopped by immunity. Fatutu will also apply this in passive ways. Whenever Fatutu gets hit or when she shares damage for allies, she transfers 1 shell to the attacker. This damage share comes from her skill 2, which gives the whole team a buff that redirects incoming damage equally among the team. If the enemy uses an AoE, that's 1 shell applied for each teammate hit. Unlike skill 1 or her ultimate, which only count as a single application toward her passive, no matter how many shells are applied, each instant of damage share counts on its own. So, every AoE the enemies throw out can trigger multiple chains for Moxie again and rapidly charge up her free skill 1 follow-up. Once the shells are on the enemy, they'll start coming back to Fatutu automatically. Every time the enemy is hit, 1 shell gets retrieved. The bonus damage and crit damage only apply to follow-up attacks, but the retrieval itself happens no matter what kind of hit it is, follow-up or not. Her skill 2 also forces a full retrieval. It instantly pulls back every single shell on the enemy all at once. With enough shells on the enemy, this will instantly heal the team to full. And of course, if enemy dies, all the shells on them are also retrieved right there and then. This also works on raid bosses. For anyone wondering, the first 3 health bar in a raid are technically treated as separate enemies. That's why all the buffs and debuffs disappear when each bar breaks, including all the shells, which get pulled back as we technically kill the boss. So, between constant retrieval from normal hits, automatic applications, and ultimate's auto re-applications, Fatutu's shell economy practically runs itself. But what makes me call her overloaded is that even outside of the shell system, every one of her skills still brings something valuable. Her skill 1 doesn't just apply shell, it also purifies 1 to 3 debuff from each ally depending on the skill rank. And since she automatically casts skill 1 so often through her passive as follow-up, she ends up cleansing the team quite consistently without needing to hack action points. For her skill 2, before it retrieves shells or apply damage sharing, it first redistributes the team's HP evenly. It's a small effect, but it actually prevents her from wasting the healing effect coming from pulling all the shells when some allies are still in full health while others are low. As for her ultimate, it might not have any extra utility toggled in, but it does have a 700% multiplier, which is ridiculous for a healer. Yeah, I know, that's a lot of effects, but honestly, she's not as complicated as she sounds. Most of what Fatutu does just happens automatically, and you don't need to micromanage her. In most fights, you'll want to open with skill 1 to get those first shells out, then only use it during the fight when you need a strong purify. You also want to use her skill 2 regularly to keep the damage sharing buff active. Her ultimate basically recharges itself. Once it's on a target, every single hit against that enemy will have 20% chance to generate a Moxie for Fatutu. She gains so much passive Moxie from shield triggers that she'll be dropping ult every few turns without you even trying. That said, this can be a bit of double-edged sword, because Fatutu follows up so often and automatically, there are stages where that can actually work against you. If an enemy has a nasty counter effect and she accidentally hit them with a follow-up, things can go south pretty fast. So in those situations, make sure you're controlling which enemy end up with the most shells. That way, you can steer her auto follow-ups away from the wrong target. There is also one advanced interaction that I do need to mention for this video. With Euphoria, Eternity's skill will passively deal damage to each teammate above 50% health once. The game counts that as an attack, and that does trigger Fatutu's damage sharing buff. So in a 4-man team, one hit from Eternity becomes 16 separate instances of damage, with each hit bouncing to the other 3 teammates. And that's where Semmelweis comes in. Her main damage source is the AoE follow-up from her ultimate. At base, it does no damage, but its multiplier increases for each time an ally takes damage that turn, up to 20 stacks. Before Fatutu, hitting that 20 stack cap was tough. Even with Eternity, you'd cap out around 12. And it got worse in long fights since Eternity stops damaging allies when their HP drop below 50%. Fatutu completely solves that. She keeps the team topped off and helps Semmelweis to get her full stack each turn fairly easily. Even though she will be missing out on Eternities and her own bonuses that only work at low health, Fatutu's shell provides more than enough damage bonus and crit damage boost to make up for it. This synergy, along with the upcoming Euphoria update for Pickles, which turns him into an insane mineral support, propelled her all the way to the top as one of the best mineral DPS for Reveries. Just keep in mind though, even with all that, she still won't be quite as busted as Recoleta, who is coming into patches. To be completely honest with you guys, her kit is already so strong that unlocking her portrait doesn't really change how her play at all. They do have some nice effects, but you're not going to feel a huge difference with or without them. P1 and P5 are damage-focused portrait. They increase how many shells she can hold and slightly boost the power they give with each stacks. P2 makes her free follow-up happen more often, which means a bit more purifying here and there. P3 slightly raises the chance of getting Moxie, and P4 increases the cap of her damage sharing stacks while also boosting her healing per shell a little. As for building Fatutu, it's pretty straightforward. Attack is the most important stats as her healing scales directly off it, and of course, the secondary stats being crit to slightly boost her damage. Defensive stats are not as valuable on Fatutu due to her damage sharing buff and the insane healing. For Psychube, you'll definitely want to use her signature if possible. When equipped on her, it passively gives the team a 14% to 28% crit damage boost, and also increase her healing further. If you don't have the resource to grab that right now, the Inquisitive Deer is your next best option. It won't boost the team, but it will still support her healing well enough to do the job. Outside of Semmelweis' comp, there isn't one specific team that Fatutu needs to be in. She's at her best with follow-up focused characters, especially those who already have good crit rate, since she doesn't provide any herself. That makes her a staple in rate teams with follow-up DPS. But even beyond that, her pure utility, consistent purifies, and massive healing makes her a reliable pick in Reveries in the Rain. She's one of those go-to healers in stage with debuffs, even if her damage boost won't work with the team. And that's everything you need to know about Fatutu, the most overloaded healer yet. Are you planning to pull for her? And also, are you ready for the Chinese New Year patch coming up? It's right around the corner. Let me know in the comment down below. And as always, this has been SteamButNext. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.